Well, thank you, Chairman Latta, and thanks to you and Ranking Member Castor for this hearing. Secretary Wright, I am glad to have the opportunity to ask you questions again today and appreciate you being here to answer them and accommodating the kind of crazy schedule we have. I'm really glad to get these questions in before the votes start again. And we've covered a lot of ground here today. I can't and won't have time to revisit all of it, but there are a few things that I have heard today in this hearing that I want to touch on briefly. And early on in the hearing, Secretary Wright, you testified that the administration is releasing from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in response to high prices, and contrasted it with the releases from the SPR during the Biden administration. And I think you said that there were no disruptions in the market during the Biden administration to justify releases from the SPR in contrast to today, but I think you misspoke because certainly you know from your years of experience that it's a global market. And in 2022, there were disruptions after Russia invaded Ukraine that set off a series of supply disruptions in Europe and beyond that affected global prices, as did our decisions here in this country and in this Congress to sanction Russia for its illegal war. And so I do think that's important context. If I had a lot more time, I would talk about how I had a bill that I introduced during the first Trump administration in the early days of the COVID pandemic to fill up the SPR when oil prices were record lows. But I have to move on. We did not do that then, and I do wish we had. I do want to touch briefly as well on part of your exchange with Congresswoman Castor, where she raised questions of trust and how industry can trust the process, right? And trust the government that they can make these investments that they want to make, that we need them to make. If grants are made and then revoked, if permits are made and revoked. Congressman Auchincloss talked about it a little bit as well. And look, I disagreed with President Biden on revoking the Keystone Pipeline permit. I disagree with President Trump on revoking the wind permits. And these issues transcend just one administration, right? I mean, the issue is whether folks in the industry can trust the United States government to be a reliable partner. But we should be doing everything we can to make sure that that is the case, because you know better than anyone, we need these investments and we need the US government to be a reliable partner and to know the rules no matter who's in charge. And so that's the issue you're hearing on this side of the aisle, is revoking all of these grants and these permits. It is a huge challenge, and I know this because of the people that I represent in Houston are a lot of the people doing a lot of this work. And, you know, as you and I have discussed in this room before, I'm lucky to have their expertise informing the work that I get to do here in Congress. So I know that for years, for decades, energy professionals have been contemplating what would happen if Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz. And, you know, others have been talking already today about kind of the state of the world. So I'm going to skip over where we are. But even the Dallas Federal Reserve Energy Survey, industry executives were saying that the war in Iran is wreaking havoc in the industry and that it feels like we've lost control of the Iran war. And if the strait doesn't open soon, we're looking at oil at $170 a barrel. So we have a real issue in front of us. And I was surprised to hear, I'm definitely going to run out of time for questions here, but the president said twice that Iran's retaliatory strikes against the Gulf states and the Strait of Hormuz were a surprise to him. He said they weren't supposed to go after all these other countries in the Middle East. Nobody expected that, and we were shocked. Now, Secretary Wright, I saw your exchange with Representative DeLauro yesterday where she asked you that question. You said you did anticipate this possibility, and frankly, that makes a lot more sense. I saw Secretary Clinton say this was in every war plan, every scenario they anticipated. So the president's statements make no sense, but I want to ask you a few questions about this. I know I'm going to have to submit some for the record, but were you consulted about the possibilities and potential outcomes in invading Iran?
Yeah, of course, I've been in dialogue with the president across the administration about the Iranian problem and potential solutions to the Iranian problem. So yes, of course we've been in dialogue about that.
And the closure in particular of the Strait of Hormuz?
Yes.
Okay. And did you know?
He did not think it was a surprise. He thought it was a surprise. The President Trump thought it was a surprise that Iran would attack Oman, that Iran would attack Azerbaijan. Iran attacked countries that have not been foes of them immediately. Nobody expected them attacking every country in the region.
I'm going to run out of time.
The closure of the Strait of Hormuz was not a surprise to anyone.
I'm going to run out of time here, so I'm going to have to yield back. I'm going to submit questions to the record.
If the gentlelady
Thank you for your time.
would